Welcome to the Coast Podcast. I'm Emily, a virtual assistant agency owner who left Amazon in 2019 to build my dream.
And I'm Whitney, a freelance writer and communications consultant who never felt at home in a cube farm.
We wanted to learn from people who paved their own ways like we did. So we created this podcast to talk to others who are brave enough to pick a different path. Creatives, entrepreneurs, people doing their careers and their lives their way.
Join us as we make new friends, get inspired, and show you beautiful paths less traveled.
Not every road leads to the coast, but the ones that do come with a great view. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Coast. My name's Emily Given, and I own a virtual assistant agency right outside of Seattle, Washington.
And my name is Whitney Popa. I own a communications consultancy in Edmonds, Washington. And today we are with my childhood and forever friend, Michelle Martinez, who is a sex and intimacy coach. And I cannot wait to get into this because she was a Catholic growing up, probably still is. And so this is like not what I expected for her life. And I'm thrilled that it has brought us here. So welcome, Michelle. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be so much fun.
It is. Yeah. So before we started recording, we were chatting a little bit about like everything that's happened in the past. Like, I don't even want to do the math on this. Like 18 years since no, it's longer. Well, let's say 22. Stop. 22 years since we have caught up, which is wild, even though I was just saying, like, you're one of the people that like flits through my mind often, and we are Facebook friends, so I have seen things here and there. But when we were growing up, I remember us both, like we were just talking about how like we started high school. I moved like a month into high school to Idaho, and we were both in full IB, like the International Baccalaureate program, which was really hard, especially for people who considered themselves very smart. And I said I probably would have dropped down to half because I just didn't like the math portion. And you went through, and we were just very like good at school, and you were like super into soccer and just good at everything, piano, art. I was just talking about how I quit art because you were so good. And I was like, oh, well, Michelle's so good already. Like, this is a skill for her. I'm just still drawing on a grid. So I'm going to quit this and like go home and read my books, which is my happy place. And I would love for you to fill that gap for our listeners between like, I am a very studious, awesome 13-year-old who's friends with Whitney doing like full on IB. And then my life took me into sex and intimacy coaching.
Yeah. So I'll do the 22-year speed through things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So out of high school, I went and got my psychology degrees in undergrad. And when I was trying to figure out like what to major in, I kept finding myself drawn, like when I would go to bookstores and things, like drawn into like the women's studies and like body image stuff and, addiction, things like that. And so it was like, oh, I should study psychology. Like that's clearly what this is. And I really wanted to become a psychologist that would help women just feel more at home in their bodies. Like, I don't know if you were aware, I feel like just in middle school, everybody is self-conscious about their bodies, and so I'm sure we had talked about that at some point or whatever, but like, it just was something that felt like this demon of mine that followed me for a long time. And so, they say like research is research. And so we wanted to kind of dive into that thing for myself and then help other people with that. And then in college, as I was taking these other gender studies classes and things, I would learn about how certain religious institutions and patriarchy and all of these other forces were contributing to my body hate and my sexual shame. And that like there was this part of me that like I kind of remember this moment reading a book where I was like, oh, this is like a pivotal moment where I have to choose, do I care more about being a good Catholic girl or my own liberation, and so it was like, okay, if I am just staying unsexual, like at this time it was like, a virgin, to be a good, holy person and worthy of marriage and partnership and whatever, how do I, like, am I willing to embrace my full sexuality and all of the like internal shame that I might have to cope with around that in order to like free myself and become just a more liberated woman in the world. And so for me, like, you know, in my 20s, I ended up kind of overcompensating, right? Like I got kind of wild, and it took me a while to figure out, like, you know, what is actually empowering, you know, is, and I think it's a different answer for every person, right? Like sometimes the thing you want is casual sex. Like sometimes that is the exact medicine that a person needs. And it just takes some time to figure out, like, all right, where is the spot in between my sexuality belongs to a man, you know, versus like, it doesn't mean anything. I'll give it away to anybody who gives a shit. I don't care. Right. But like, there's a lot of spots and options in the middle, you know, in between those two things. And I think, you know, it evolves over time. And anyway, so I went on this journey trying to figure out what it means to me. And when I was in high school, I was very involved in the church, and we had studied, gosh, I think it was Pope John Paul II's theology of the body. And I honestly don't remember many of the details of the book. I don't know if I even cracked it open, but we had the Bible study group that would study that. And the key concept that was a draw to me from that is that the body means something more than we think it means, that there's something very sacred about sexuality in the body. And so the Catholicism piece, like, was a part of the truth for me. Like that piece of it was true and resonated. But there was a certain distinction between like moralized sexuality and then this like sacred sexuality, where one of like moralized to me is we're going to make a lot of rules about what's right and wrong. And sacred sexuality is more like you're meant to feel good in your own body, like not just physically, but spiritually and energetically, right? Like to share love. So there's more like it's a rule-based thing or it's a love-based thing. And so that I think is like how those things got bridged for me. So so that brings us to, let's say, 2019. And then for a long time, I've been in very, I don't know, my psychology career took me to a VA hospital. I worked there and did mindfulness research for a while at a lab examining mindfulness for post-traumatic stress disorder. And then I worked at the Department of Health for a little while, and I never thought of myself as somebody who had much of a stomach for entrepreneurship. Like I'm too risk averse, you know? But there was this part of me that just more and more over time became very curious about not just like what would it be like to run my own business and have that, you know, independence, but who would I need to become to do that? And, you know, whether or not this works out in the long run, or I can claim to have a 6-figure, 7-figure business someday, whatever, like, what does it mean to bring my own specific medicine into the world through a business? And that sounds like a fascinating journey. Let's do that. And there's this Tantra sex and relationship coach who a friend introduced me to, and she was enrolling for her, you know, annual coaching certification program. And so I enrolled in that. And so that's where my certification comes from. And I specialized in female sexuality and tantric sex. And so what I focus on now is helping to kind of balance our sexual culture within, you know, individuals and relationships and the culture at large, just bringing in more of like the feminine energy that sex needs to be more balanced. Because for so long, you know, millennia, really, sex has been this thing that the morality of it has been defined by men. The like when it starts, when it ends is largely based on, you know, when is the man hard? When does he ejaculate, right? It's like very male-centric. And in no way do I want men to stop enjoying their bodies and enjoying sex, right? But I just want to balance it out so that women are also feeling like incredibly legitimate and valid in the sexual needs and desires that they have and what brings them pleasure in their bodies. And, you know, bodies are very diverse, and what is arousing to different people is going to, you know, be different. And so, you know, and to help people break that freeze also in relationships where someone wants to have sex and the other person says no, but they do it anyway. Like there's a compounding negative impact in someone's body when they say no and when they say yes when their body's a no, right? And it can create this resistance to sexuality altogether and shut your body down, shut your emotions down, so anyway, I'm talking a lot, but that's what I do now, and I hope that kind of ties those pieces together.
No, it absolutely does. And there's so much to unpack. I'm sure Emily has a lot of questions because we've actually talked about like our different experiences there as we've been like excited to talk to you. And so much of what you're saying is like super resonant for me, even as a person who was like not religious in like the traditional sense. Like my grandparents forced me to go to church on holidays sort of thing. But like the amount that I absorbed culturally about myself and my body and like what it meant to like give my body to somebody else. And I'm realizing now, like pretty disempowering as far as like, I mean, when we met, it was while my mom probably was in her midlife crisis, but before that, and she was a flight attendant, but before that, she was the director of safe and drug-free schools for the state of Washington, managing multi-million-dollar accounts. And I was there with her after school watching prevention videos as this little like use case of will other kids, like, will this impact them and help them make the right decisions with regard to drugs and alcohol? And where we grew up in Olympia was very much like a lot of government jobs, a lot of like cool hippy dippy stuff. And then also like very like kind of square. It was, these dichotomies are super strange. But I was kind of cultured around like we would go to Evergreen and like watch the hippies with their like armpit hair and dandelions in the bathroom on their nude beaches prancing around. And then I would be in my mom's office watching prevention videos and trying to decide. I indexed on the side of like being the most moralistic, best, whatever that meant, person. And that applied to everything. Like drugs and alcohol was kind of like the foundation for that. But then it was like I moralized myself and everyone around me into all these like, this is what being good should look like. This is how I protect and think about my body. And I realized recently I had a lot of unwanted male attention throughout my life. And what I was talking to Emily about this like a few weeks ago, what that created in me was like, I controlled it, but it was also like I'm constantly fighting them and their desires of me versus considering what I wanted. And so it's become this thing that I'm kind of investigating now. And I love that like it took you to where it is and you were able to kind of be in that headspace of questioning it. Because I think especially like at all of our ages, there's so many things that we're like in our 30s thinking about and questioning and deciding for ourselves now. Like I didn't even know that I was making decisions about this. I just thought that that's how it was or how I was supposed to be. And now I'm in the driver's seat or realizing that I am. And to have somebody like you leading the way who like swung from this thing that like, again, you don't know. Like when I left Olympia, I went to Catholic school and I would ask people like, why do you do they would tap their heads. Yeah.
Sign of the cross, yeah.
Not the sign of the cross, but the ones that was like on the head, on the lips, and like on the heart. There was like some tapping that they would do.
Oh.
And I didn't know what it meant, and neither did they. And so I would ask them, like, what is this? And they were like, we don't know. We just do it. Meanwhile, they're like putting rum in their coffees on the way to school too. So it was like, so much of what we did was automatic, even if we resisted it in our own ways, but we didn't know. And now we're all in this life place. And you, by, going wild in your 20s, as you said, like kind of were able to figure that out for yourself. Whereas I put myself on the path of like, this is the right thing. And, I will give myself to the first person who I love. And it will be like that, which for me was the right choice. But then I was just so fearful of men too. And I still kind of am in certain ways. Like I always feel like they're coming after me and I have to be like in this, they always want it and I have to be like, yes or no, which is good to an extent. But I mean, it's so interesting.
Centers their desire always, right? It's like their desire. And then your thing is to be the one to say yes or no, but they're the initiator. It's not you going and saying, this is what I want.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's, makes a lot of sense.
So on the way home, from our photo shoot, it's a really interesting conversation. And I have a backstory, and my backstory, like I am a foster kid, yada, yada. But I have realized in my early 30s now that,
when I call out that you're early 30s and we're like mid to late 30s, but like, please go ahead.
Elder millennial.
Yeah. I think I'm a regular millennial.
She rolls her hair.
But I had this realization that I also had a period of, let's call it my wild early 20s, right? And I had this realization that like it came from a place of like I wanted to be wanted because I felt so unwanted in childhood. And so, whoa, like sex makes people want me. And then, I learned this about myself as well, which I'm like, well, yeah. But I felt like I could control men. And that was like really empowering in looking back, like a way that wasn't necessarily healthy. But
it's hilarious because I felt the opposite.
Yeah, right. So everyone has different experience in sexuality. And I was like, yes, I feel very powerful. And then I kind of just ran with that in my early 20s. I was telling Whitney, like, yeah, I had casual sex, and because I like sex. It wasn't because I needed a boyfriend. It wasn't because I needed and it was a completely different experience for me. And I felt that I still feel like I was very empowered in my early 20s to just do whatever the heck I wanted. And now I'm in a relationship where like my husband is not able to be controlled. So it's taken us a long time to like, figure out that dynamic. And it's good because like for the first time I'm like loved for something more than that. And that's just really awesome that that person gets to be my husband. But it's been an interesting, realization as I've grown up. So
yeah. When I'm interested for you, Michelle, like, I mean, even hearing from us, you probably have to unpack so much with people. Like, what's your process like? You get like, I say, Michelle, I need you. And you say, okay. And then what?
Yeah. So I always like to start with an intake, questionnaire first, to make sure that the thing that they want help with is something that I have the capacity and the expertise to help them with, right? Because I'm not going to take someone who's like, my main problem is vaginismus or vulvodynia or so, like some medical thing. That's not my area, right? So I start with that to make sure it's more of a, like an emotional, psychological something that to help with. And once I can verify that, we spend our first session talking about what they want. Like it's always just very desire driven. And when we come into, so then we start with the desire, and then we try to map out all of the pieces of resistance around having that thing. And that's where a lot of times fears, shames, lack of belief that a thing can happen that they want to happen, that like those things will come up there. Any kind of like unsafety, right? So like maybe someone really wants to experience, like maybe they've never had sex with somebody they're deeply in love with yet. And they've been like, kind of keeping men at arm's length because that just feels less vulnerable. And so what they desire is to have this like deeply emotionally intimate sex with somebody. And then when they visualize that, having that's another thing that we do together is like go through a vivid visualization of what it would be like in real life to actually have that thing. Like when will you know that you've arrived and you've got the thing that you want? Because then you notice what comes up in your thoughts and in your sensations in your body. So something that might come up there is, well, that's so vulnerable because if I have that, then I might lose it and that would break me, right? Like that would absolutely break me. And from there, what we might do is build more self-trust, right? So like it is, it's important to validate, like, yeah, it's possible that you do that and that person leaves. I can never guarantee, true love forever or anything like that. But the way that we open ourselves to that possibility of, loving and losing or loving and having is to trust ourselves to handle the losing part. And to know that it won't mean that we're unlovable. to fill ourselves up with that worthiness ahead of time, and to be in that I've got my own back kind of space. So there's a lot of different somatic embodiment practices that we could do together to start to build that piece up, that self-trust, that sense of worthiness of love. And, so then from that space, they'll feel more comfortable taking those like emotional risks with somebody.
Yeah. I'm thinking about my experiences and how the realizations, like how in life you'll be doing all this work, and then all of a sudden, like you had been in the session, you feel like, oh, this was a lot of hard work and I'm not completely like unlocked on this thing. And then like for me, I'll be standing by the coffee maker a few days later and it'll completely unlock like the fact that work is still going on in your subconscious. And I'm like, holy shit, this is why I can be kind of like frigid or prudish, because I've spent my whole life pushing men away who I didn't want, who didn't hear me when I said no. And I'm not saying like I was like raped by any means, which is just awful, but like even just like somebody liking me and me saying no a million times and them not hearing that, like that is impactful for me. So I spend all of my life like pushing them away, including my husband, and then that affects him. And so my blocks are around like, now that I'm aware, then I can work on it. But at the same time, I'm like, I imagine that this work with people is like so deep and profound that it can be like they have one hard session or realization and then they feel resistant to continuing to do the work. Like I'm a person who pushes through. I love self-improvement. I love like going there, but I even feel like, sex stuff for me, it's still like, ooh, I don't know. Like if I were to work with anybody, it would probably be something like you, but like some stranger, I would be like, I don't know that you're a safe place for me to do this work. And then even if I feel vulnerable with you, then I'm like, now I'm uncomfy. Like, do you have people who just are like, I'm going to need to bow out?
That hasn't happened yet. Yeah. I have had a client need to take a break from our sessions because she just was in like what we would call a sexual winter. She's like, this is just not a time in my life to be doing like touching myself and doing these like pleasure practices and things. Like, I'm just not into it. My body's a no. And and the whole point is to listen to your body, right? So like that kind of thing will happen. But I completely agree with you. Even in my experience doing, all the inner work practices that were required for the coaching certification, there were 100% times where I would actually there would be like an expansion of some kind.
Yeah.
Like a big breakthrough and like, oh my God, I just realized this whole new thing for me that's possible and it's so great. But then it followed by like a really intense contraction where it's like, you know what, never mind. All this is bullshit. These people are terrible. I don't feel safe. And that's so normal. And it's like the way it's been explained to me, it's like our ego is just trying to maintain status quo and stay with what's familiar, even though the familiar thing is not necessarily the thing that feels best for us, right? But yeah, you've hit it on the head. It's deeply vulnerable work. And one of the reasons I love working with sexuality as opposed to just, a lot of other areas of self-improvement and growth is that sexuality encompasses so many other things. Yeah. Like, you're right. It's like our relationship to our partners, our relationship to pleasure, our relationship to our bodies. And so it's like, if you feel empowered and free in your sexuality, it has this incredible ripple effect that just makes every other part of your life better, I think. So.
Yep. I realized too, for me, I like have been so sexualized, like as far as other people like leering and commenting on me and my body, that I protected it. And for me too, like being in IV together and being like smart, that was my thing. Like I like indexed on, please call me smart and love me for my brain, not my body. And then I was like, wait, but I'm hot. I want to be hot too. So last year I took my body back, especially after having kids. So I had 2 kids and then and everybody was fucking using my body. and I'm sick of it. Everybody in my house, I'm like, everybody here has been in my body, and I don't like that. We're done. And now you all touch me and follow me around. I don't want to be touched all the time. I don't want to have my body touched, groped, used, and it's already like turns out a trigger for me. So to have like, I hired a trainer. I decided to get like more comfortable with my body again and like what I was looking at, and then taking back control of my body. I think it's like part of my journey of like, okay, now I can like get reacquainted and feel comfortable with my body. And I mean, I know the things that I want in the bedroom and all that, but like even just getting more comfortable initiating, because I've been so in the place of like, you know, I mean, boo-hoo, people come after me, but still everybody has their things. And, you know, the opposite is also true. I had an ex-boyfriend who rejected me a couple times, and I was like, what? Like, no, that's not how
you must be mistaken.
Yeah. Because like you came after me, and now like I don't get rejected. And so it's been this path of like, I feel like somebody signing up with you is jumping into the deep end for a lot of people. And I'm like, for me, I'm on that journey of like, okay, first reacquaint yourself with your body and make it yours again and get some autonomy back. Like nobody's using my boobs. Nobody's like following me around and touching me, but then they still are. So as soon as I created that like protective layer, now I'm feeling like, okay, maybe I can be safe in that and like move on a little bit. And anyway, enough about me. How's your family reacted to all of this? Like, what's that been like for you?
Yeah, great question. I mean, you know, my mom, she's, she's actually been much more supportive than I would have anticipated. It's so funny though, because, you know, like I'll post something and then one of our family friends will be like, you're driving your mom crazy. Like this is gonna like, you know, freak her out or whatever. And we have a laugh over it. And then my mom might bring up some posts that I, you know, posted, and it's like, so you're still following me, right? Like she hasn't unfollowed yet. And I think that's just funny. She's like, I've thought about it a couple times. But I think ultimately she's maintaining a curiosity around it, you know, and I'm not putting my body out there in my marketing the way that some sex coaches do, you know, because I mean, there's just a lot of reasons for that, right? And I go kind of back and forth about like, oh, is that because of insecurity? Is that because I don't want to trigger people? Is that because I don't feel free enough? Or is that because I just don't need to? It's not necessary, you know, and I want my message to be the thing that comes across. And, you know, is that objectifying myself, et cetera? You know, like it gets so complicated with all these different questions, but at the end of the day, it doesn't feel like it's needed or that it supports what I'm trying to say in any special way. So, but yeah, they are, they're supportive. My sisters are supportive. I just don't, my dad just doesn't mention anything much about it. I don't think he does follow me, which is totally fine. And most of my relatives, like if they do, they're not, like my Instagram account, I haven't seen like much, you know, family members or whatever, but the ones that do are supported. So I guess that's all I could say about that. I really haven't had anyone be critical or discouraging. I will say that.
Mm-hmm. I feel like for you too, it's and something that I've been noticing for myself, it's the internal versus external validation. For a lot of our lives, especially when we're super studious and you were a big athlete too, it's like you're getting all this external validation and not realizing that I was always pretty internally validated. I was very solid in who I was, but still swayed and needed that external validation. And now as I've progressed in my life and my career and my healing journeys, I've been on this, like, I don't need that. Like, I can feel the feeling rise up of like, I'd love for you to be proud of me or say that you are, but I also don't need that. I know that this is, like you said, the medicine that I'm meant to give to the world. And whether you're on board with that or not is irrelevant, which is a word your sister taught me.
Oh, yeah?
We were like, she said something about irrelevant. We were at your house. And that's so funny. I have so many memories. And I was like, that's not a word. And she literally brought out the dictionary and showed it to me. And I learned, it was Janelle. I learned in that moment what irrelevant meant. And she was like in high school and so cool and had a boyfriend and knew even bigger words than I did. And I was like, oh.
Man, I love these core memories.
Yeah. A lot of core memories for me at your house. That's why, like, I think of the little, like, what's it called? Like, not a pentagram. That's like the witchy thing. It's the thing on the piano that goes back and forth.
On a piano, like a metronome?
The metronome. I think of that at your house. And then I'm like, from that to sex coach, it's just so incredible. I love this journey for us. What's like a normal amount of like, or a comfortable amount of clients for you to have? Because you're taking on a lot too when you're working with them energetically. Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I'm not full-time in this yet. I still have a day job. So my, and a lot of that has to do with loan forgiveness and, different financial things. And so, like I said, I'm pretty risk averse. I think, when I think about quitting that stable thing and going full-time into the coaching stuff, it's just, I have a 5-year trajectory that I'm hoping I can do that at the end of 5 years. But for now I've got a full day job. So my client load is 1 to 2. I've got a few weeknights because aside from that, it would eat up, a weeknight. I want my weekends to stay free. So what I am working on currently actually is a group coaching offer. So I can do weekly calls with the group, and then that will be scalable and have ongoing enrollment, and I can serve everyone in the same space. So we could talk more about that, but it's been, I started the business in 2020, and it has taken some time to figure out what is the right business model that is going to work, because one-on-one, that high touch work with people is the most powerful, to be able to work with someone in an intensive way like that, and generally higher ticket, right? And all of that. So people do tend to recommend starting with book out your one-on-ones, but I just don't have the time. And so I've had to schedule, pick my own, this is when I can do a call, whoever can make it. But yeah, 1 to 2 clients at a time.
Yeah. And I don't think it doesn't have to be your full-time job either. We talk to so many people and they do a lot of things. And I think it's awesome to be able to serve people in that way, and you don't have to want it to be full-time either. So I think even if it's such a high-touch, vulnerable thing that I can't even imagine having a full day of clients and something like that. And being able to hold that space for everyone, just because I'm such a sponge, energetically, that I have these big antennas, I can't take it all on. You have an app too, though, right?
Yeah.
And people can just I'm looking at, I haven't been on the app, but I would download it and be like, here's my sex tip of the day, or what's it got in it?
Yeah. So the BodyWise coaching app, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store, is really designed to help someone create their own solo sexuality practice, which is the thing that I had found in my own journey was the sticking point, because I get so intellectual and in my head about these things. I've got stacks and stacks of books about embodiment, right? Embodiment, sexuality, tantra, all these different things. And I will always start there, something I need to understand it in my mind first, and then I'll read, and then they'll give all these practices to actually, embody the thing or experience what they're talking about, and I'll just move on to the next book. It's so hard for me to sit down, lay down, do the practice, do the breath work, the self-pleasure, the jade egg, all these different things. And so what I needed was something that would help me stay motivated to do my own practices, because that is where the results are, that's where you draw yourself back into your body, you become the source of your own turn on, you start to understand what really works for you, and you also get that self-connection with your own body, right? It just feels like this is where I reclaim the space that my body is mine. And I don't just, something doesn't just go in me when it's somebody else. Like I connect with myself in this way. I touch my own breasts. I experience pleasure on my own terms. Right. So it's like that. It's just that balancing out that like my body is for me and it's for me every day. So in the app, there's like an orientation section, some videos to kind of set the mood and the vibe. And then there's a practice library that is divided into the different kinds of practices like breath work. There's some meditations. There's a lot of different self-pleasuring, something called sex magic. And so there's these audio guided practices, and some of them have tutorial videos to go along with them. And then a tracking feature where you can basically log that you did the practice. And so for a long time, I would be, logging those. And I'm just one of those people that is motivated by like a streak, like I don't want to break my streak of my daily things. And so seeing that was motivating for me, and being able to have a little checkbox every day to be like, yes, I did it. That was, that served me and helped me stay consistent. So that's what the app is for. And once I've got this new offer up and running, I'll put a link to that as well. And there's already, if someone wants to schedule a call to talk about one-on-one work, that's in there. So if anyone's ready for the next step, those next steps are in the app too.
So are you partnering like with a lot of different like sex shops or like toy companies or anything like that? Because I could just see like that being really successful for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually recently have started to do that. So I have affiliated accounts with a few different online stores that sell things like, yoni jade eggs and crystal dildos and things like that. I'm not, and now I'm about to say something that I feel like I need to take a little stand. So I am very pro pleasure and think everyone that has not had an orgasm yet should go out and buy a vibrator straight away and like use that to get there. I also became pretty dependent on a vibrator for a long time. And it actually wasn't until I went like on a long international trip and like didn't have it with me that I finally learned how to climax without one. And so I want to promote the tools that help people build those natural pleasure pathways inside of them that aren't so clitoral focused and not so like, because you have to keep amping up the stimulation, right? It becomes this kind of like that like hedonistic treadmill pattern. And it takes attention and sensitivity away from those more subtle energy pathways in the vagina that allow for actually like much deeper, more cathartic, and even like borderline psychedelic types of experiences and orgasms. Like a cervical orgasm might, I don't think all the science is out on this yet, but there's reason to believe that there's like DMT type chemicals that get released in a cervical orgasm. And so people have, reported a lot of these amazing kinds of experiences. And so I guess all this to say, I won't be promoting or selling like a lot of different types of sex toys. Like mostly what it is the crystal wands and the jade eggs and things that build that natural pelvic floor strength and sensitivity. But yes, I absolutely put links into these different tools in the app and everywhere else.
Yeah, we were on your website when like the idea popped in my mind, or I saw your update on Facebook about something, and then I was on your website. Oh, because your cover photo was of the app. So I was like on your website, and we saw all the they're very fancy looking toys. And so we were on your website, and Emily was like, you have to email her. You have to contact her. And while we were still together, you emailed us back. But like, I hear what you're saying about all of those things and the buildup of more stimulation. I only knew about the eggs because of Gwyneth.
I know. They got kind of a bad rap because of her, actually.
Really?
Yeah, didn't they? Isn't everyone like, oh, that's like a goop thing and it's bullshit?
What do you
right?
I mean, I know it used to
Get up. Yeah.
Is it big? I mean, all right.
It's not. See, I have it right here. Do you want me to grab it? I mean, the podcasters won't be able to see, but you will.
Yes, I do.
All right.
And jade, that's like healing properties. Crystal anything, especially sex toys.
So you just like put it in and hold it there? Like,
there's drilled versions and not drilled versions. So mine, I don't know if you can see, but there's like a little hole. Yeah. See the hole?
yeah.
Drilled through it. So you string it so that you can pull it out. I did forget to do that one time and it got stuck. There's like a little like a shelf in your pelvic bone, and so it can kind of get stuck back there. Like, so anyway, I had to dig it out. But most of the time when I use it, I string it. And to answer your question about like what you do with it, there's like 3 different kinds of practices. So the thing, and this is the progression that I like to take people through, is you start out by just wearing it, which means just put it in and go about your day. And that, with just pretty passively will give your, it'll bring your attention a bit more to your vagina throughout the day, because you may just kind of feel it in there. You'll be reminded that it's in there. And in the meantime, those the walls of your vagina are also just like being stimulated in a very subtle way. And that is going to just help to kind of wake them up a bit more. So I sometimes wonder if guys are more sexual or think about sex more just because their genitals are like out and about, right? Like they're stimulated, they're being touched, they're being handled all the time, and so if we had, something that kind of brought our attention more to that area, throughout the day, we might also feel more like erotically alive, right? So that's just wearing it is the first option. And then to do like a low resistance practice, you would string it and then try to hold it in as you kind of tug on it. So putting it kind of in a shallow part of yourself and then moving it deeper and deeper until it's like touching the cervix. And so then you kind of work along the different parts of the vaginal canal, and you can feel the different parts of your, vaginal muscles and build the strength that way. And then when you're feeling strong enough, you add some weight to it and basically stand up and like swing up, go like a weight around.
I just had to hold the past episode of Sex Life. Remember, she was doing that.
Yeah, which is fun. It's like you could treat it like weightlifting. There's a sacred sexuality coach, Kim Anami, that is pretty famous for being a vaginal weightlifter, and she's big into jade, and we'll post about all the wild things that she can lift with her vagina. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's flex right there.
Yeah. Emily's like on your website about to buy one with an affiliate link right now. Probably really helpful for moms who have given vaginal birth too, just in terms of like re-strengthening and reacquainting yourself with your sexuality. Not that like, moms are special, but I wonder too, do you recommend for people like as far as like cycle syncing? Obviously, I mean, some people probably do it on their periods, but most would take that week off, like, your ovulatory, like I'm feeling nice time, and you're like, you got some more fluids going down there too. Like, is that where you recommend people start, or they can start like really any time of their cycle with a jade egg?
With the jade egg, the only time not to do it is when you're bleeding, just because the energy is all like down and out. And so like tensing and using muscles and having something inside that just is creating a block. And so just energetically, it's just like, let it flow, let it go. Like, don't put anything in there. So, I mean, I'm actually not super sensitive to my own hormones. So I don't know. I've used it during my period before, but since I learned about that, that it can be better to just let it flow, just do that. But I think it's, experiment with it, see if it feels like it needs, like it's creating that block, or if you don't mind. So yeah, but that's the only guidance around that I'm aware of.
Yeah. I love the group coaching idea. It almost feels like a good entry point for people. Like, it is a super vulnerable thing, but I almost feel more comfortable sharing with other women in that way. Like, whereas other things I wouldn't want to do with a group. This is something where I would be like, oh, cool. Like, we're all curious about this. And it almost feels safer to start with the group and then do one-to-ones. I'm just trying to think of like other women, all of us, especially millennials, like kind of cultured out of and conditioned out of our own like sexuality in a lot of ways. and having different paths, even Emily and I having like such kind of opposite experiences and yet still bonding so much about it because there's just so much to explore that I don't know if like, what do you think, Emily? Would you like in a group session? I'd be like super into that.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be not into it for sure. I mean, it is good to get different perspectives, but also the group increases the likelihood that someone else has your same perspective and same experience, and then you don't feel so alone.
Yeah. I love that. I love that offer, and we'll be excited to link to it. So one of the things that we do too, now that I'm doing more with our Instagram, is like, as we see things pop up, I try to share them so people would know, like, even if your group coaching launched like months from now, we would see it pop up and be like, remember Michelle, like join her group coaching and get her app and all that stuff. Oh my gosh. I'm like, I still have so many questions, but I love this. And I love like you're like transforming people's lives just by even giving them, like them opting in, they're giving themselves via you as their guide, like permission to reacquaint themselves with their body. And that is so powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure, you know, you guys can relate. Like there's ups and downs in this entrepreneurial journey. And sometimes it just feels like, is anybody listening? Like, who am I helping? Right. And it just helps so much. Like, I mean, when you first reached out, right, you just never know who's seeing things that you're putting out there. Right. And what you just said, just, you know, that's going to fuel me for the rest of the month. So thank you so much. Yeah,
of course. And there are so many people like, God, we grew up in such a weird place. And so I'm really interested because I'm thinking like, you know, in our middle school, we had like, it was very normal to have like trans kids in the halls and everything. Like back in the 90s, that wasn't weird. But at the same time, like we called everything gay and like that was part of our language. And so I'm really intrigued by like the audience that's going to find you and who's like ready and available and how they grew up, because we had these things that were very, 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 very progressive. And at the same time, like the complete opposite too, where like I said, the greeners with their boobs out at Evergreen. And then my mom, like in the prevention videos. And I wonder how many people from high school will be like, hey, knocking on your door, like, Michelle, help me like reawaken my body. I know you're finding your whole new audience, but I wonder too, like, as everybody's kind of gone on their journey, is like, if you'll see anybody just reemerge. I know even just my business is not as emotionally vulnerable, and like the people who have come out of the woodwork where I'm like, dang, I didn't know you were watching or that you would refer me or want to hire me. It's pretty incredible.
I feel like your business is super emotionally vulnerable, Whitney. So I don't know why you say that. Like
I mean, in terms of like the work that I do for people, it's like, let me write your website. It's not let me help you reacquaint yourself with your sexuality.
Right. But like I'm just saying, like your soul is like in what you do. So don't.
Oh yeah. No. Yeah. I'm exhausted writing like a tech article. Like, why did this take so much out of me emotionally? But yeah, I mean, I thank you for saying that, because I do put my soul into things. I'm just like super intrigued for Michelle too, of like thinking of all the girls we went to middle school with. Like, I don't think you were in this crew, but I ran in middle school, at least part of my crew. I think I had a couple crews where we were in the counselor's office like every week, from like different bullying things that went down, whether they had a burn book before there was a burn book. There are people who I was close with then who've reached out to me who are like, were going through their own stuff then and apologizing for some of the things that they did to me. I was awful too. Like, I mean, so if I'm just interested based on like the intricacies of the past relationships that we had and like this strange world that we grew up in, how if anybody's just gonna come out and be like, I want to buy your yoni egg through your affiliate link, Michelle, and you're like, what the fuck? Yeah, like I never thought I'd hear from this person. Or like, you know, an ideal world, like a dude on behalf of his wife or something, or like saw you and told his wife about you and was like, you should talk to my friend from middle school.
Yeah, that would be incredible, and it's like, I think there's been enough distance at this point, like 22 years, like you probably wouldn't, people that I've been hanging out with for the past, 3 to 5 years, like I think that's a weird line. Like you don't want your current close friends to be your, intimate coach or whatever. But there's enough space now between, I think, me and so many of the folks, that we went to school with, that it actually, there's that connection from the past.
Familiarity.
Right? Yeah. And that familiarity. And you're like, oh yeah, I have this connection. I trust this person. Right. Yeah. But enough emotional distance too, where it's like, if something were to go sideways here, like I'm not going to lose a friend group, or it's not going to be really weird, or what, like I can tell her if I want to stop working with her for any reason, or if something just wasn't, working out. So yeah, that would be cool if that happened.
Yeah. I love it. I'm like, Michelle, sign me up for your group coaching. Because that's like the next step of me. Like, I do think like this is divinely guided in the sense that like the next step for me with reclaiming my body is doing that level of work too. And like, even if I felt like super sexually empowered, I feel like most women would benefit from doing that kind of like, I'm taking the time to look at this part of my life work in this realm, because we don't even know. The thing that's been scary for me is like when I find out a belief that I've been holding and then I decide like to question it and be like, is this a story that I want to keep telling myself? Is this even true? I didn't realize that I was carrying it all those years until then. And then I'm like, oh, like, dang, I've been believing this for so long. Even I was talking to my girlfriends this morning, like about recession stuff. You don't have to believe that that's going to be affecting us in our businesses. Like, and when we do, then we're setting ourselves up for like, this is a very real thing that can and is and could happen. But do I believe that it's going to affect my business? Because then I'm going to start making moves that will validate that experience. And it's same with like all these things, like, I've had all these intuitives tell me like, I think you were like sexually abused. I'm like, okay, this is a little too creepy, and that you repressed it. And it's a little too creepy that multiple people have said that. But at the same time, I'm like, I think what you're feeling is a lot of what I already know. And the things of like, it's not like I was raped and I have no idea. It's like all these people all my life like put that kind of sexual pressure on me starting super young. And so I created like this whole protective field around myself. And I think that's what you're sensing. Maybe I was raped. I hope not. And I don't want this to like trigger warning. I hope this, isn't really scary for somebody else if they have been raped. I just like, I don't think that's the story. I think it's more of like a whole lifetime.
Right. And you bring up a great point, because I think sometimes people think, something really horrific like that hasn't happened to me, so I don't have something that needs healed in that area. And there is like a compound effect of harassment or, body shaming comments or, slut shaming that happens, like all of these different things, right? And they add up, and sometimes even just a singular incident by someone that is really influential in your life, right, can change the narrative that you carry in your head and these belief systems. And it's so, there's a lesson in the group coaching program, a video about like rewriting your sexual story. And it's a lot like what you were just talking about. Like, you don't even realize it's a story that you've been telling yourself until you take a look at it and think about what the alternatives could be. Like we carry all these beliefs about like how men are, how men's sexuality is, what women's sexuality is, like what it means to be, a desirable woman in the world, or, whatever. And it's just so easy to not investigate those or think about like, is this how it is because this is how it has to be? Or is this how it is because this is just kind of how it is in my head, even maybe not even culturally, but just like right now. And we all have the power to rewrite it from like the inside out. Right. And like you can create a new belief system for yourself. And then when you embody a different reality, like it has that ripple effect in the culture, right? It's like there's just going to be a tipping point, of people that choose to believe a different thing until it becomes like just kind of more the experience on a wider scale for people. And so, yeah, that's the belief thing is really interesting. And sometimes I think we take our negative beliefs more seriously than our positive ones, right? But at the end of the day, they're still beliefs. So why not pick the one that feels better?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that too. Like you said, rewriting that story, that's such a powerful exercise. Emily, I think this is a good time for our rapid fires that are not so rapid.
Just pulling those up. Okay. So Michelle, we do some rapid fires. You don't have to answer them quickly if you don't want to. You also can like bend them however you want. So first one is, what are you proudest of in your business right now?
I'm really proud in my business right now that I have figured out how to take all of the different things that I want to talk about and make them into like one offer. Because I think it's so hard as an entrepreneur, especially in a space like sexuality where it can go so many different directions. And, there's been this part of me that I want to work with women, but I also want to loop men in, or at least be talking about men's sexuality in relation to, how women relate to their own sexuality. And so this offer I'm putting together that is this culminating thing that I'm really proud of is called Infinite Intimacy. And I could talk a bit more about the different, aspects of that, but it brings together connection with your own body and sexuality. It deals with the cultural like slut shaming and this like Madonna whore complex that even if you don't grow up in a religious, environment, like it just has seeped into the culture, right? So bringing back together our sexual selves and our spiritual selves. And then, creating a partnered sex relationship that feels like just absolutely exquisite for you. I like to compare it to like, sex should feel good the way that a massage feels good, right? Like, are you ever going to be offered a massage and say no, especially from like a professional, right? Like if it feels good, you will want it. It's just when we anticipate it not being what we want, or we have to perform or whatever, and that's when like the blocks go up. And so it's bringing in these tantric principles and the slow sex principles to help couples connect in a really relaxed way that doesn't demand performance from either person and just generates a lot of connection and pleasure between them. So that's my not rapid response.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, we love a non-rapid.
Tell us about a book you read or a podcast you listened to that changed the way you're thinking about your life or your business.
I would say Pussy by Regina Thomas-Schauer. She goes by Mama Gina, and she's a big influencer in the sexuality space. I read her book when I was, I think in 2019 when I was going through the coaching certification program. But, for a long time, I was like, oh yeah, sex and, liberation, feminism, all these things, like that's all great. And again, it was very heady for me. But her book focuses so much on like, no, you have to pay attention to this specific part of your body. Like she has been ignored and dismissed and abused and numbed out and like all these things. And it's so easy to ignore that part of us, for the reasons we were talking about before. Like it's just, she's just easy. She doesn't call attention the way like that external genitalia would. Right. So, and in that book, there's so many stories about how cultures, like goddess worshiping cultures, used to like, honor and revere and the pussy, the yoni in Sanskrit, the word is yoni. And, just the source of all this life and pleasure and creativity, it's like all of, and sometimes I hesitate to get like super into anatomy because I don't want people to feel like if they don't have the specific anatomy that they're missing out or they don't have access to something. But just for me and my body, learning, it just creates a whole new appreciation of everything in there. Even I never think about my womb. I've never had kids, and like aside from, bleeding once a month, like I'm not thinking about it. Even when I am bleeding, I'm not thinking about my womb. And there's so much to learn about that space and its creative power even outside of creating human life. And so that book was a real eye-opener for me in terms of the empowerment around that part of the body, and what, how we might return to more of that, and how healing that could be for so many people to just, obsess over their pussies more.
Yeah. And Lala on Vanderpump, when she told me a couple seasons ago about something about she only uses pussy in the positive because it takes a beating. It's so strong. You never call someone a pussy, because if you're that makes no sense. Pussies are the strongest things. I was like, fuck yeah, take back pussy.
Reclaim it.
That's right.
Yeah. Speaking of pussy, I'm just kidding. What would your last meal be? I'm kidding. You're bad. Love that.
That's so funny. What if it was there? I mean, that'd be a cool last meal, to be honest.
Someone actually said that.
Yeah.
One of the few male exceptions we made.
Nice. Oh, honestly, I love it.
He didn't say it outright, but he definitely said it.
Yeah, man, my last meal. The things that come to mind are just my favorite foods. But then I don't want to overthink it. Because even when you ask someone their favorite thing, you're like, oh gosh, this is going to define me in some way. Right? It's so much pressure. But I'll just say Thai food, Chinese food, tacos, something like that.
Okay. Loves.
Yeah. Not Fiesta fries with ranch. Gone. Not memorable for her. As it was for me.
Best business purchase you've made under $100 in the last 6 months?
Under $100.
This is the rule most people break, the $100.
Right.
Because we don't really care.
Best business. Yeah, man. Isn't it funny that I'm having a hard time thinking of something under $100 that I've purchased for my business?
All the yonis, those are more than $100.
The yoni eggs? Those are less than 100, but
not that you're using it.
There wasn't a time frame on this purchase, right? So yeah, probably that one. Although that came as part of a course that was more than $100. But I mean, I would say that, the jade egg. Because also for me, it's fun to have a tool to use while I'm doing my embodiment practices, so it's like buying a new workout outfit that helps you get to the gym.
Yeah. And finally, what is lighting you up lately?
I think slowing everything down a lot is lighting me up lately. When I started the business, I was working full time. I was, studying I was in the tail end of the coaching certification program. And I just, for the past few years, have been really in hustle mode around everything, putting a lot of pressure on myself to get to a certain place with, my social media, with clients, with income, all these things. And lately, I don't know if it's because people, I just feel like there's been a lot of mortality reminders, in life. And so I have been zooming out a bit and focusing more on what does it mean for me to have a meaningful human life, and how do I serve people without all this pressure on them to be my clients and pay me money, right? Just to be the medicine, instead of putting all this pressure on it to manifest in a specific way that I've seen it manifesting for other people, or comparing myself to them. And, realizing that so many of the experiences and quality of relationships that I want to have are so much closer than I think they are, because if I just remove the how of it. So it's been, lighting me up these days, just being outside more, going for walks, just being out in the yard, being in the sun, reading, doing so many things that don't have an ROI in the traditional sense, that are just
productive.
Yeah. Yep.
No, I love that. It's actually a theme of a manifestation group that I'm in right now, our theme of the month is surrender. And that's hard for me. Emily and I talk a lot about like feminine versus masculine energy. And even yesterday she texted me like, just so you know, she came off of this big like business incubator and she was like, I'm in masculine energy right now. I'm like pushing things forward. And I'm like, get it, throw that dick on the table. Like, give me some masculine energy. I am here for it. And also thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
No, because I know that you sometimes are resistant to that, and I'm feeling very much in masculine energy right now. And so I felt like I needed to warn you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, isn't it great that these are how we are having conversations now?
Yeah. Well, we know each other really well now. So it's like, hey, I know this is going to piss you off. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to disappear for a week. Don't expect to hear from me. And she's like, okay, cool. Got it. Well, we're taking us a while to get in this rhythm, but we're good now. Like, before we let you go, tell us where we can find you. Tell our listeners like how to get hold of you, how to find out about your offerings. Where can we find you on the interwebs?
Yeah. So my Instagram is the Michelle Martinez. I'm one of the people. And same actually, my handle on YouTube, I believe that they gave me that handle, the Michelle Martinez. My website is michelle-martinez.net, not .com, but .net. And I have a TikTok, but I'm not really on there. Like, don't go there. Like, there's some stuff, but yeah, I'm not super active on TikTok. I guess I'm not going to say no to followers, so go join if that's your thing. And I've got a free Facebook group called the BodyWise Collective. So I can provide links to that as well. And yeah, I think that's it. Oh, and the app, if you want to download the BodyWise coaching app, just search for BodyWise coaching. BodyWise is one word, BodyWise. And that it should pop up. The logo is a green snake with a flower, and that has a whole backstory with it. But yeah, those are the places.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time and sharing all of this with us. I'm so excited and I love bearing witness to your journey.
Thank you so much. This is an amazing podcast that you have, and I just feel really honored. So yeah, and also just great catching up with you. You're amazing.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning in to another episode of The Coast. We will see you whenever we feel like it. Bye.